Hi, everybody. Well, my guest is having some technical difficulties. So this is 2 weeks in a row that this is happening. So while we are waiting for her to possibly join us, I figured I would jump on and answer some questions I've been getting this week. And hopefully she'll be able to join us. And if not, we'll just chit chat. If you have any questions, let me open up the chat. So I did get a few questions this week on regarding last week's live, where I talked about questions that I ask when I'm looking at a presentation deck about an investment. So I'm going to pull those out. So the first question that I got was, when I'm looking for properties to buy, what kind of lists do I use? So for those of you that follow me, probably already know the answer. I don't have any lists. So all of the things that I buy are within 10 minutes of my house. Now, today I did go up and look at something about 30 minutes from my house. So let me share. I don't mean to not be looking at the camera, but I'm looking for the questions that the person wrote to me. So my buy box, when I'm looking at shopping centers or strip centers to buy, are a few things. One, I want the property to be parallel with the street, and the street needs to have a lot of traffic. It needs to be a high traffic street. So for the 3 properties that I own on University Drive down here in Davie, where I live in Davie, and these properties are about 10 minutes from my house, we have 65,000 cars on University Drive. That's great. And the properties, all 3 of them, are run parallel to University Drive, not perpendicular. Because why is that important to me? Because the retail tenants want as much visibility and exposure as possible. And when you have a property that runs perpendicular to the main drag or the main drive, the street that has all of the traffic, the traffic cannot see their signs. And it makes it difficult to lease because they don't have the visibility and exposure like they do when the property fronts the main street with all of the traffic. So that's the first thing I look for. So if I get a package or someone sends me a strip center to look at, like a broker called me this morning around 8:30 and said, I have something I think that you would be interested in. This broker is great because he has listened to what my needs are, which I'll finish telling you what the buy box is. And this one fit all the box, checked all of the boxes, all but maybe 1 or 2, which is why I drove to see it today. And it is about 30 minutes away, but still in South Florida. So I like a high traffic street. The one that I went to see today has that. I like it to be parallel to the street. This one has that. I like it to be in an area with high income. Why is that? My retailers need sales. And the more disposable income in the area, the more sales they typically do, I find, after doing this for 39 years. So I want high income. I don't want, if a broker sends me a project and it is a U-shaped project, meaning in the corner there are elbow spaces, I will not buy shopping centers that have elbow spaces. When you drive around your market over the next week, if you look and see where most of the vacancies are in the country, because I do this obviously for a living, I consult for companies and I help them go canvas and find tenants. All of the vacancies are in the elbows. Why is that? Because the tenants don't have adequate exposure and visibility to the street, to the traffic. So when you have elbow spaces, which I know some of you do, you must prospect for destination tenants, daycares, doctor's offices, gymnastic studios, things that are definitely destination oriented, where a customer will drive by 5 different daycares to go to the one that their kids registered at. So, but but it's hard. It's hard to find those destination tenants that will take spaces in the corner with very limited parking and definitely limited exposure and visibility. And then I like to have a lot of parking because in today's world, the tenants that fill the most vacancies are the 5 F words. Don't worry, if you have children around, I won't be saying those F words. They're food and beverage, fun, fitness, go with me here, physicians, and furry friends, meaning anything with a pet. Since COVID, the pet industry has just blown up, especially obviously dogs. But guess what all of those uses need? Fitness, food and beverage, and fun. Fun is like axe throwing, putt-putt, bounce house places. They all need parking. So as much parking as possible, or access to additional parking. I'm looking at a property to buy right now. I have already scoped out some land behind the property. We've already figured out who owns it because I would like to possibly get that property and have the tenants park their cars there so that the parking lot for the customers is opened up and we could get more food and beverage. And then the last thing that I look for in my buy box is nearby hospitals and universities. And the reason I like that, same reason that I brought up with the high disposable income, high income areas, is you get an extra level of daytime population that can feed your tenants. So for example, hospitals and universities, they eat a lot at lunchtime. So the 3 properties that I was mentioning earlier that I have on University Drive were across the street from Nova Southeastern University. I think it's got 30,000 students and a brand new hospital. I think it opened about 2 years ago. I think they said 500,000 people go there a year. So my restaurants are fueled by those daytime population drivers, hospitals and universities. The property that I went to look at today does not have a hospital or a university near it. And the broker said that to me on the phone this morning. He goes, it doesn't have a hospital or university, but it checked all the other boxes. So I went and I drove by and I might make an offer. So back to the question, what lists do I look at to find properties for sale? I don't look at lists. I focus on the market that I want to own in, and I identify properties, and then I'm respectfully persistent in calling the owner of the property and trying to get them to sell to me. And that has worked in my favor multiple times. At least 3 of the current 4 properties that I own, I did that. Now it takes a while, it takes time. The one that I just purchased a partnership in, so I own 34% of a shopping center. I owned a property over here. I bought a strip club, knocked it down and built a strip center, but I bugged that owner for 2 years. And then I own this one over here. And the one in the middle that I was after for 14 years. It took me 14 years to get my now 92-year-old partner. I met him when he was 76. He's now 92. But for all of those years, I bugged him to let me either buy the center or come in as a partner. And 2.5 years ago, he finally relented. And we have a very happy partnership. We just finished a $3.5 million renovation on that property. So we own the 3. I have different partners in each one, but I am a co-GP in that one and then the general partner on the other 2, 3 in a row, and it checks all of the boxes of my buy box. Another question is, how do you follow up with a seller without being annoying? Great question. Great question, because you can imagine for 14 years. So I will share this story about that. For about 3 or 4 years, I would call my partner every quarter. And for the first year or two, when I would call him, I'd have to introduce myself each time. And in anything in sales, if your customer does not recognize you on a phone call, or if you're canvassing and you walk into a store and they can't associate you with what you're selling. In other words, I was trying to sell me as a buyer of this guy's property. If you have to reintroduce yourself every time, you have not done enough for them to know who you are. They don't know who you are. So I would say for 2 years, I called this guy and he didn't really, I'd have to reintroduce myself each time until, and so I said, this isn't getting me anywhere. This isn't helping. At one point, he, I think, recognized who I was, and I would call and he would say, no, Beth, I don't want to sell to you. You know, it was a joke. Like he'd pick up the phone. Hi, Beth. No, I still don't want to sell to you. And that went on for probably 2 years. And I realized the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I said, what else can I do? So what I started to do is I started to share knowledge and information that I thought would be important to him and that would help him. So adding value. So, and this is what I say to people that I coach or my clients. I say, when they say, well, I've been trying to call this retailer 30 times and they never call me back. What I say is, well, you're not doing your job because you're not getting their attention, which might mean that you're just sending an email blast or you're sending the same flyer. You, just like the broker this morning, he got my attention because he said, I think I have a property for you. It does this, it does this, it does this, it does this. It doesn't do this, but it does the others. Like he got my attention to where I drove out there and looked at the property today. If you're trying to call someone multiple times, maybe like a retailer, to look at your site, you need to get their attention and be able to connect the dots. What is their need? And do you have a solution to that need? And then mention that in an email or a text or a DM. So I realized after 4 or 5 years, I was getting nowhere with this gentleman. And I was realizing that he wasn't going to sell to me. What else can I do to be involved? Because since I owned 2 properties on either side of them, one I built brand new and one I had renovated, his 1980 property in the middle of both of ours was not helping raise up the market. And I wanted to get in there and try to help him renovate it. And he didn't really see the value of that. So what I started doing is I started sharing with him vendors that I thought would be good for him, that I liked, or that I had a bad experience with and I wanted him to avoid. And that's when the relationship took off, when I stopped bugging him about what I wanted and cultivated a relationship. And that is obviously probably the best advice for any salesperson in any industry ever, is stop making it about you or me and making it about them. And that is what really turned the relationship and made it be stronger with us. It still took too many years, but I persisted. And like I said, during COVID, he reached out. Now he's probably 88 at the time. And he said, or 87, he said, I can't, the tenants don't want to pay rent. And, he just said, I can't do this anymore. Why don't you come in? Would you be interested in managing the property? And I normally would not do third-party management, but nose of the camel in the tent. If you've ever heard that story, if you don't know what that is, look that up. It was my way to get in there with him, get closer to him, right? Proximity to power, and share more of my skill set. Now, what was very interesting, if you think about it, I did not really want to share with him the rents I was getting on either of the 2 properties, because if there was a potential that I could buy in or buy the property, I didn't want to stick a fork in my foot. That's not the right, but I didn't want to hurt myself negatively by sharing too much information to where it would have hurt me negatively on a purchase price or a partnership share price. So I was able to do that, and we navigated an excellent way for me to buy in. It started with me buying one of his partners out, and then we went from there, and now I'm a 34% owner. So I think the answer to the question is, how do you stay persistent and follow up without being annoying, is to think about what their needs are and try to give them what their needs are. I had a leasing agent call me about this a couple of days ago, and she said, I don't know what I can give this particular national retail prospect. And so we went online, and I said, have you ever looked at this person's Facebook or Instagram? And she said no, which we did together. And it turns out that this guy's an avid bike rider, like rides bicycle races. And what I told her to do was to find an article about bike racing and send it to him, and just say, hey, I noticed that you're an avid bicyclist and saw this article and thought it might be interested. And wouldn't you know, the guy called her back. Now, he said the site wasn't for him, but she got the connection when she stopped thinking just about her and what she wanted to put in front of him and thought about him. So, that's those two questions. And now I can't find my sheet with the questions. Anybody want to text me any questions while we're here? I guess my guest has not figured out her issues. This is 2 weeks in a row. We got to fix this. I cannot find the questions. So that's that. I hope that you guys are getting value when you jump in and I don't have a guest. Yeah, I wrote it down, but I cannot find it. Sorry, guys. So hopefully next week, Wednesday. Yes. Hopefully we will have a guest that I'll be able to interview. We have thank you, Mo. We have 67 tickets left for the summit. The summit is March 4th through the 6th, and it is in Fort Lauderdale at the La Meridian. We have 8 to 10 speakers that I'll be interviewing, tons of new breakout sessions this year where we're doing some behind the scenes things, like how do you manage your VA, and how we have someone that owns an accounting bookkeeping firm that I think they're doing a breakout on running accounting for your properties. We'll have an underwriting person. Yes, and I have another podcast called I Own a Shopping Center, Now What? And if you guys have not watched that, I do that weekly thanks to my trusty partner, Mo Regalado, Movo Media, and we post it every week, and it's quick, 3 or 4 minutes. And I get lots of questions from people about owning shopping centers, and that's where I just, bing, bang, boom, give you guys advice about that. I own a shopping center, now what? So that we post that weekly. But anyway, if you are interested in coming to the summit, I know we're going to sell out by year end, so please get in. We do have a deal for mothers and daughters because I want the next generation to get involved earlier. My son, who's 25, just invested in his first deal. I'm so proud of him. And the summit is life-changing if you haven't been there yet. And I'd love you to come. And if there are guys, I understand that 50% of we looked at the analytics, and 50% of the people who watch the Women Investor Wednesday podcast are men. So you men, if you would like your wives to come to the summit, it would be a great holiday gift, right? Yes, Sid, you can ask a question. Can you type it? If you can type it in a quick hurry, I'm happy to answer it. Have you ever dealt with retail space that has mold, black mold? How did you get it remediated and getting it? Yeah, I've actually had space that has mold, and I've hired a mold expert to come in. They clean it, they sanitize it, and they give you a piece of paper that says it, or there's a test where they can bring in a little something to test to see if it's got mold. And then that report would go to whoever is concerned that there's mold. So you definitely have to clean up mold. You can't sell a property with mold in it. So, but there's mold remediation companies. Just what I would do is ask them for references, because that is kind of a business that you could get people that maybe might not know what they're doing. So I would definitely find someone in your market that is a mold remediation company. Ask them for references. Ask your friends. If you're on Twitter, go on Twitter. Twitter is like the place to be. And go on Twitter and say, hey, I'm from Austin, Texas, and I need a mold remediation company. Please, someone who has had good experience, let me know. That's what I would do. And then get that report, and then you're golden. And then you can sell your property. Carmelita, I'm excited that you're going to be there. It's fabulous. So thank you all for joining, all 103 of you. And hopefully next week we're going to have a guest. Mwah. Have a great week. Happy Halloween.